The M4 Mac Mini. I forgot to say the intro line. I'm not doing that again.
This is the brand new, totally base model M4 Mac Mini. 16 gigs of RAM, 256 gig drive. And this is my now 3-year-old, very much beefed up M1 Max. 32 gigabytes of RAM and a terabyte SSD. This one was, I think, like $3,500, and this one is only $599. And considering that enormous price difference, the experience between these two machines is surprisingly similar. Now that these new M4s are finally out, I wanted to compare the video editing capabilities of the very cheapest Mac you can buy to what was once one of the most expensive laptops you could buy. And this tiny thing does not disappoint. And I should point out that at the time I bought this M1 Max, this M1 base model Mac Mini did disappoint, at least when it came to video editing. Using it as a regular computer, I write on this thing all the time. If you have a studio display, the new Mac Mini fits and sits right here on the bottom of the display. Although with ports on both sides, I guess you'd have to have it like that. This thing is smaller than my phone, and I don't even have the big phone. This is the size of the thing compared to the older generations of Mac Mini. It's so much more mini. I'm trading in this base model M1 Mac Mini to make this thing less than 500 bucks. I've pretty much always bought my Macs at the middle to higher end because I'm a photographer and a video editor, and that's always been sort of a demanding thing, especially because I shoot with multiple cameras at pretty high resolutions. We're shooting 4K right now on 2 cameras, but sometimes I go up to 4. But an interesting thing is happening right now. We're doing this at a really interesting time. I'm pretty sure we're not gonna move beyond 4K as a standard for a while. Like, yes, some cameras can shoot in 8K. Almost no displays support 8K, and your eyes can't really see the difference anyway. So I'm guessing that we're gonna be in a 4K world for at least the rest of the 2020s. I might get my hands on an 8K camera just so I can punch in even closer from even further away. If Sony comes out with like the A7 VI or something and it shoots 8K, maybe I'll get one of those, but I'm confident I will not be shooting in multicam 8K before 2030, which means that if this thing can handle video editing now, this computer, this $600 computer, will be good for a bunch of years. But anyway, from the time I bought this M1 Max to now, pretty much nothing has changed about how video editing goes. It's all the same codecs. HEVC H.265 was pretty new back in 2020, and I'm sure we'll stay on that compression for another bunch of years. On the lead up to this M1, a few years before then, everything was kind of changing, and we were kind of swapping. The whole world was sort of going to 4K from 1080p. Most things had been happening in 1080p. Consumer cameras and YouTube people were just starting to mess with 4K. And TVs and monitors were all getting sharper and denser, and older hardware was lagging behind. It was getting harder to do video editing with your older computers, especially when it came to Macs with Intel chips. I wish I had one here to test today, because the video file I'm gonna get to in like 30 seconds would absolutely stop an old Intel Mac. It would be like 4 frames per second. But from M1 to M4, at least in the last few years, we've sort of settled into a standard video format. My Final Cut Pro feels about the same now as it did then. And editing hasn't gotten much more demanding on the hardware. Cutting out your background in real time just isn't that demanding. With these new media engines in these chips, videos that look like this one, 4K video files don't really stress your CPU too much. Which means if this base model computer, like the cheapest, wimpiest version of a new M4 that you can buy, if this thing can edit a 4-camera, 4K multicam video, as a video editor, what would even be the point of paying more and getting a beefier machine? I set up a test. I edited a video on both of these computers. Basically, I edited half of the DJI Mavic Air 3S video I just posted last week, which was actually shot in 60 FPS on 2 different cameras. I started the edit on the base model M4 Mac Mini and then finished it on this M1 Max MacBook Pro. I had them connected to the same Apple Studio display using the same keyboard and mouse, so ergonomically I was doing the same thing, editing the video just on 2 separate computers. And I moved the video project file from computer hard drive to computer hard drive, so they were editing from their native drive. I didn't want any sort of external SSD bottleneck. And since I wanted to be able to test out pretty much the most taxing thing I'm ever gonna ask my computer to do, I edited a separate video for the unboxing of this Mac Mini and this new M4 Max MacBook Pro. And my videos aren't full of crazy amounts of effects, but for this unboxing, I was shooting with 4 cameras, all in 4K, all in Sony's HAVC HS, which is HEVC, which is H.265 compression. Sorry for all that. Basically much smaller files for the same video quality. But for instance, I have an RTX 3080 Windows computer back there, a computer that runs on like 500 watts of power, and it cannot edit a video like that smoothly. Like it can't handle 4 streams of H.265. But ever since M1, Macs have had these fancy media engines, a hardware encoder decoder specifically made for this video codec. And then I think starting in M3, they put the AV1 codec, which is for like Netflix. And also for this edit, I have Final Cut Pro set to full resolution resolution, so no proxy files. I turned off background rendering, it's doing everything in real time, and combined those 4 4K streams into one multicam shot. So they're all running simultaneously. And on top of that, I threw in some titles that have some particle effects, which actually stresses these computers a lot more than the 4K video does. That's the only time I can ever get this thing to slow down, is if I have like multiple layers of titles that have animations in them. Anyway, the base model M4 Mac Mini, like this is the cheapest one, not the Pro, handled this edit perfectly smoothly, 0 dropped frames. And it's just as important to point out that so does this M1 Max. No drop frames. This thing can handle that video file totally fine. The actual editing experience between these two computers was indistinguishable. Like, if you've already got an M1 Max computer, you probably want to justify upgrading to the M4 Max. I know I do, and I did. We'll get to this in another video this week. But honestly, this M1 Max practically never makes me wait for anything. It doesn't stutter while editing, and while I'm waiting for an export of a video, I'm able to slide over and get to work on thumbnails at the same time in Lightroom and Photoshop, and that doesn't seem like it goes any slower either. Like, the video export happening in the background does not slow down this computer, or at least not the feel of it. And the same is true for this base model Mac Mini. Now that they've got 16 gigs of RAM in the base model, this experience is the same. So if you already have a nice display and a keyboard and a mouse, and you don't need to travel with your computer, and you're deciding between the older M1 Max and the new M1 Mac Mini, get the Mac Mini. It's cheaper, and these feel exactly the same. They get there a completely different way. Like, this one's just mega fast, while this one just has a billion cores to do stuff, but they feel the same. The fact that this base model Mac, the cheapest Mac desktop that you can buy, can handle this edit without dropping any frames. Like, the pool of people who actually require more computing power than this little thing is capable of is exceedingly small. Yes, I know doing simulations or like multiple virtual machines or compiling really complex code or 3D AutoCAD works these machines a whole lot harder than video editing does. But if you're not doing those things, you can barely make use of the extra power. I also wanted to test large file transfer speed, just because previously in the base model, if you only got 256 gigs of storage, that SSD would be a lot smaller than if you got like a full terabyte that's in this M1 Max. Something to do with the memory chip being all in one NAND on the SSD. Several people have taken this thing apart now though and found that it does have 2 chips on the SSD. I put together a quick large file test. I did this test using my NVMe external drive. It's a super fast drive, and I have a Thunderbolt 5 cable hooked up to it, which neither of these computers have Thunderbolt 5, but they both have Thunderbolt 4. So I just wanted to make sure there was no bottleneck with the cord. And this drive is fast enough that you can edit straight off this drive. You don't even have to move files onto the actual computer hard drives, which is one of the reasons I'm okay going with the M4 totally base model with just the 256 gig drive, because I can just use a 1 terabyte external drive. If it's an NVMe drive, you can edit it straight off of it. On my M1 Max, transferring an 11 gigabyte file, geez, it did this in just about 12 seconds. The Mac Mini did the same file transfer in about twice the time, 24 seconds. Looking at the Geekbench real quick, my M1 Max CPU scores 2349 single core and 12,082 multi-core. The M4 Mac Mini beats it by a good margin with 3675 single core and 14,692 multi-core. They both have 10-core CPUs, but the M1 Max has double the number of performance cores, where this guy has twice as many efficiency cores. But the raw speed of this new processor, or processors, makes up for and even surpasses the M1 Max. The M1 Max's GPU score still smokes the M4 base model, 123,000 to 58,000. So this has a little more than double the GPU power. All that said, those numbers for a video editor don't seem to translate to any difference in the experience. Really, at all. Editing on this computer feels exactly like editing on this computer. Importing video can be a bottleneck for the M4 Mac Mini. Since this computer has no built-in card reader, you're going to be limited to the speed of whatever external one you're using. These newer V90 cards have a second row of contact points. That's how you know they're UHS-2 speed. And I'm using this Thunderbolt hub from Orico, which actually has an SSD built in. It's an NVMe one too. But the SD card reader built into this is clearly not using that UHS-2 speed for import. So that's not the Mac Mini's fault. If you're going to go with the Mac Mini and you edit long 4K videos, so the files are really big, you're going to want to get yourself a UHS-2 card reader. That alone would save you more time than you'd get back by buying the M4 Max, which will export faster, but not faster enough to make up for slow import times. Although this has a UHS-2 card reader built into it too. We'll talk about that in another video, maybe the next video. Exporting in Final Cut Pro does seem to be a place where the M1 MAX MacBook Pro just kind of stomps all over the base M4 Mac Mini. And I think that has everything to do with this one little checkbox here when you're about to export. Allow export segmentation. I honestly never even knew this computer was doing that, since I never compared it to anything. I went straight to this M1 Max from an Intel MacBook Pro. But because the M1 Max has 2 video encode and decode engines, where the M4 base model only has 1 encode and decode engine, the M1 Max gets to basically export 2 halves of a video at the same time, and then just stitch them together real quick at the end. The M4, which technically has a faster chip, has to encode the whole export using just 1 media engine. So the M1 Max is actually close to twice as fast at exporting finished videos. It's interesting, I think a majority of that work is being done in the video encode engines, and not with the CPU and GPU like I would have thought. Looking at iStatistica Pro while exporting, both of these computers are not using anywhere close to all of their available CPU or GPU power. The fans aren't loud, so it's not a heat bottleneck. It's just running at whatever speed those encode engines run at. I think the CPU and the GPU get used a lot to render things like transitions and animated titles. So if you do a lot of animations, the GPU is going to get used a lot more. And again, the base model M4 only has 10 cores of GPU, where the M1 Max has 32. This one has 32. I think you could have got it with 24. The one part of my semi-regular workflow that does go a lot slower than I would like the only time when I wish I had a faster computer, is with Insta360 footage, which I just don't use that often anyway. With this camera, you can't just pull the footage straight off of it and put it into Final Cut Pro. You have to process it first through the Insta360 editing program. I love this thing for making time lapses, because since it's just shooting in all directions, you don't have to worry about where it's facing, and you can line up your time lapse afterwards. When I was painting this studio, it was really easy to get a really good time lapse because I was moving all over the room. I could just put this in the middle and worry about it later. But the Insta360 app takes a long time to render. The M4 Mac Mini can chew through a 15-minute 5K 360 video in, 27 minutes and 36 seconds. The M1 Max MacBook Pro did the same work in 25.5 minutes. We can go ahead and just call that the same though. I mean, that's a process that's long enough you're gonna have to walk away from it anyway, so 2 minutes really didn't make a difference. So, what do I think? If you're making talking head videos, or really any kind of videos where you're using 4 cameras or less at any given time and shooting in 4K resolution, even if you're using advanced HEVC compression, the base model M4 Mac Mini has you covered. You don't even need the Pro. If you do tons of animated titles or 3D objects in your videos, you might want to get the Pro. Or the M1 Max MacBook Pro, the 32-core GPU can handle that stuff. When comparing this computer to this computer, they feel and act very similar, even if they're achieving that feeling in a very different way. Faster cores, more cores. I almost can't believe that you could do full-time editing work on Apple's cheapest computer. This M4 business is tits. Next up, I'm gonna talk about this absolute monster, which I now know, even before testing it, that I'm gonna have no way to use a majority of its potential. I'll be driving this Lamborghini in rush hour traffic for the next 5 years or so, until something compels me to upgrade to the M10, which better come with a humanoid robot that does my laundry or something.
Fly with caution.
This drone is pissed.